Hello, everybody. Hello. Yes, chat. Decided to walk into a little coffee shop nearby, and who did I run into but you? Gotta say, I'm a little surprised. I didn't expect to see you all here. But you know, it's great. Running into you has made my day better already. How are you doing today, chat? Yes, nice to see all of you as always. Tia and Blue Ice Cube and Lottle and Pinboo. Hello, Pinboo. Welcome. That's right. That's right. It is stream time. Yes, the background. Some of you who saw my recent video might recognize this background. Decided to use it again because it's just that good. But yes, Lottle, thank you for wishing us a good day. I am having a good day. I hope you all are having a good day too. Yes, a nice Friday for everyone. So chat, today's stream will be in a way about several things, but I suppose if you're not familiar with the relevant subreddit, perhaps we should start there, because I think that's probably the most crucial piece of context for today's stream. Of course, chat, you know me, I'm always interested in any form in which philosophical discussion takes place, although some would say that calling this particular subreddit a form of philosophical discussion is perhaps pushing it a little bit. But nevertheless, I do think there is something here to the moral dilemmas that are presented sometimes in this subreddit. And so chat, I'm going to just put myself down here so you can see. The subreddit that I am speaking of is, of course, the not very nicely titled, but still very aptly titled in a way, Am I the Asshole? And it's seemingly one of the most popular subreddits, at least in terms of like community engagement. Like if you look at the posts, some of them have like, you know, thousands of upvotes, and it's pretty regular for them to just have like hundreds of comments and thousands of upvotes. People love this subreddit. But anyway, what it's marketed as is a catharsis for the frustrated moral philosopher in all of us, and a place to finally find out if you were wrong in a real-world argument that's been bothering you. So the typical structure of cases that are posted here is that someone does something that they feel justified in, that they think, okay, like, you know, I was in the right in this clearly, but then they get criticism for it. Someone in their life reacts negatively to it. And then the person starts to wonder, well, was I really in the right in this interaction? Or was I wrong? Was I being a jerk? Was I the asshole, to put it in the parlance of the subreddit's title? And then they post about it and get feedback from the community where people will say either, oh yeah, dude, like you were totally the asshole in that case. You were totally in the wrong. Like, how could you have done that? Or they might say, oh no, dude, like that other person is being a jerk. Like they're the idiot. You should not feel bad about what you did. So it's a subreddit of many extremes like that. Although sometimes they will say, like, nobody was in the wrong here, or you were both in the wrong. So the verdicts can vary quite a bit. But what I think that this subreddit suggests is that there's, in a way, a real craving for answers to the practical problems, the practical dilemmas of people's lives. Or maybe it's just a craving for drama. It's always a little hard to judge. But in any case, today I was thinking we could look at some of the classic cases that have been posted to this subreddit, some of the cases that have inspired quite a bit of thought and discussion, and sometimes controversy. Sometimes a lot of people saying yes, sometimes a lot of people saying no. And to see if we can get to the bottom of some of these cases, chat, to see if we can arrive at our own verdict. Although maybe I shouldn't say our own verdict, because that makes it sound like we'll all reach the same verdict. And on some of these cases, we might very well reach different verdicts. That's right, I don't expect all of us to agree on cases like these. And that's perfectly fine. These are cases where reasonable disagreement is very much possible. Speaking of reasonable disagreement, before we continue today, I did want to say, Tia, I saw some of your stream earlier today, and I thought it was very nice, the stream on pseudo-intellectualism and trying to understand the components of pseudo-intellectualism. I wasn't able to see the entire stream. I had to bow out a bit before the end, but from what I did see, it was very nicely done, so just wanted to commend you on that. But chat, with all that in mind, I suppose we can go ahead and get started. I have several cases today that I'd like for us to look at. And the first one is called Am I the asshole for wanting to pay for babysitting my own daughter? What a title. This is from 3 years ago. As you can see, almost 18,000 upvotes on this case. I'm just going to read the case out loud to you, and then we can talk about it for a little bit. So here's how the case goes. My wife, so this is someone who's 39-year-old husband, 34-year-old wife, and I live at a suburban house with our daughter, Emily, who's 10. Our neighbor next door, Walter, who's 48, is a single father with 2 daughters, 14 and 12. We've been living here for a little more than 2 years. My wife really likes watching scary movies. Could we get the links for these in chat? That is a good idea, Pinboo. And yes, you certainly can. So here's the link for this first one, in case anybody wants to follow along. My wife really likes watching scary movies, but I have never enjoyed them. I get too scared, end up having a bad time, so I prefer to avoid them. Her friends sometimes go with her to the more popular ones, but she also likes older indies and foreign horror movies. She has always had a hard time finding people that have this niche interest, and that is why it was such a big deal when we met Walter and found out he also shares this tendency. They very quickly started to make plans to watch movies together. I was invited to be a part of this, but refused. I prefer to just stay at home babysitting Emily and Walter's daughter while they are in their cinephile reunions. Sometimes they go to movie theaters, but other times they just stay at Walter's place, watching stuff at his home cinema. They usually have to go to another town in order to catch a specific function of some weird movie, so it is normal for them to come back very late. They eventually started doing stuff outside of watching movies, like going out for dinner. Walter invited all of us, including the kids, to go with him to a restaurant that a friend of him owned, but I said no because it was too expensive. I don't like that kind of places because I feel they are a waste of money and didn't think the kids would enjoy it either. I insisted on staying with the kids and let the 2 of them go be themselves. This has become a regular thing, and it is in a way a good deal for me because Walter pays for my wife's dinner and she can't no longer complain about me not taking her to fancy restaurants. As both their movie and dinner nights had become so common, I have grown a little tired of the burden of constantly babysitting the girls. I talked to my wife and Walter about it, and he explained that he usually does not like leaving his daughters with babysitters. He says he is really comfortable knowing that they are being watched by an experienced father like me, instead of some teenage girl. He nevertheless agreed that it was too much of a load for me, and offered to start paying me a standard babysitter fee each time he goes out with his wife. With my wife. Bit of a Freudian slip there, perhaps. Each time he goes out with my wife. I thought that was a fair approach to the issue, but my wife was fully against it. She says I should not be paid for babysitting my own daughter, nor the daughters of a close friend of our family like Walter. We have been arguing about this, but she insists on this notion and it's not open to change. She even gets mad every time I talk to her about this. Walter promised me that he will convince her, but he does not seem to have been able to do so either. Am I the asshole? So I see from some of the comments that some of you already have some thoughts on the case. Tia says, I'm guessing he got voted the asshole. Knowing this subreddit's culture, I think your premonition might be correct there, Tia. This feels a bit like an incel bait. It does sound a little fake. That is the thing about the subreddit. You can never tell sometimes if the posts are fake or not, or if they're just calculated to produce maximum controversy or maximum drama. It's always a little tough to judge. Yeah, this one, perhaps one thing I should say as the preface is, even though we can't know, we could always, of course, just evaluate it as a hypothetical. But yeah, there is part of me that wonders too, if it really is real. So chat, about this case, I suppose that there's an elephant in the room. Yep, it's one of those cases when you read it, or when many people read it, they wonder, there's something special about this case, you know? Something that calls out for our attention, calls out to be addressed. Namely, what exactly are this guy's wife and Walter doing during all of their long movie nights, as they call them? Especially with all the dates, the dinners at the nice restaurants. Just a little curious. Now, of course, if they're genuinely non-monogamous, that's fine. But he doesn't say anything about non-monogamy in the post and seems like, maybe he's just a little oblivious here. Oblivious to what might be going on. I just noticed this is old Reddit good taste. Oh yeah, I definitely like the old format compared to the new. Rose, oh hello Ro, welcome to the stream. Seems he is only getting paid for babysitting the neighbor's daughter, which seems fair. Well, that's one perspective one could have on it. We'll see in a moment some of the different perspectives that come up in the chat. But yeah, so it sounds like you're advancing one consideration that maybe he's not being a jerk in this situation. Something, haha, cheating. Yeah, movie nights has my wife's boyfriend energy. It's funny that you all bring that up because if we look at the comments in the chat, I recall he does get savaged on this quite a bit. This first one says, you're the asshole for several reasons, 2 of which are calling taking care of your own kid babysitting and not really caring about your marriage. Don't be surprised if your wife ends up leaving you for Walter if they're not already having an affair. And even harsher down here, I'm sorry OP, but it looks like your wife has a new husband and somehow you're the babysitter. I kept reading, thinking this must be a joke. Your wife is dating your neighbor and you think he should pay you. Pimping ain't easy. It's hard out there. Oh man, yeah, so far all of these comments are against him. You're the asshole. Walter and your wife might have a common interest, but they've tried to involve you in things outside of that, like going out to eat, and you refused. And now you're complaining about sitting at home and moping and babysitting, which you chose to do. Also, ticking the box of taking your wife out for a nice dinner by letting someone else do it. So, you're the asshole. You're the asshole for basically outsourcing your wife to the neighbor. There's just something about this wording that I love, outsourcing your wife. So that is one perspective that one could have on this case. What do you think, chat? It's easier for me to believe that it's fake, that he's that oblivious, but I don't know. I called the YTA verdict. Yeah, something tells me even if he were to suspect that, like let's just suppose that it were a real case, or that it is a real case, and he were to start suspecting his wife's fidelity, I wonder, would he maybe think, like, oh yes, this is another thing I don't have to do. Walter's taking care of basically all of my duties for me. Leon loves Am I the Asshole, so I'm well acquainted with these dynamics. I see. Yeah, so chat, what do you think? Is this guy, in fact, being an asshole in this case, or is there more to be said in his defense? The account is 3 years old, only engaged with this post never again. Seems a bit fake for me, IDK. Yeah, it could be fake. Maybe it was just a troll who had this one idea, and then they posted it and went off into the sunset. I kind of like thinking that maybe it was real, and just after all these comments, he was like, oh, gee, like, I better get a new account. Like, if I don't get a new account after this, people are gonna tie this back to me, and then that's just going to be, like, what I'm forever known after if I don't change my account. But yes, in all honesty, it would not surprise me if this is a troll. It's wild because in most situations that I've seen, the husband would get jealous that his wife is getting all the attention from his neighbor, but dude just doesn't care. I mean, one thing you can say about the poster in this case is that he does seem like a very practical guy, you know, anything that saves him time. Anything that saves him from having to take his wife out on dates, like he's all in for that. Like, and he gets paid for it. I mean, like win-win-win situation, right? For real, I'd say, ooh, equally shared. So interesting. So I wonder who would the other person be who's acting wrongly in that situation? Would it be Walter? Would it be the wife? Oh, well, I guess like if the wife is cheating on him, then I guess maybe that would be the thought. Which, fair enough. I mean, if she feels that her husband is neglecting her, then one could, I think, very reasonably argue that there are better ways to respond to that situation than just outright cheating on your husband. Of course, we don't know a lot of the background. Some of it we just have to sort of piece in. So my verdict is Like, at first, I was a little unsure of what to think. I thought, okay, maybe there's a case that means, oh, everyone sucks here. For some reason, I interpret it as equally shared asshole, but I guess, yeah, that wouldn't start with an H for the last word. But yeah, everyone sucks here. I see. Still, the idea was on the right track. Just had the acronym a little bit wrong. But yeah, the more I think about this case, the more it seems to me that, yeah, this guy really is in the wrong. And I think one of the key facts is that the youngest girl, as he says at the beginning, is his daughter, who's 10. And then Walter's 2 daughters are 12 and 14. And you all can tell me if you differ on this, chat, but it seems to me that that's pretty much old enough to where these kids can look after themselves and entertain themselves. It's not like the father would have to be constantly watching them, constantly monitoring them, unless they're like a special needs case, which he doesn't say in the post. So I'm guessing probably not. And in light of that, the complaint about like having to babysit them just seems a little over dramatic. Would be my verdict on that. Now, we could ask, okay, then like, does that make him the asshole for feeling that way? Like for feeling that it's a burden? And I wouldn't say that necessarily. I'm a little skeptical in general that somebody could reasonably be called an asshole or a jerk just on the basis of feeling a certain way. But I do think that if it were me, if I were him in this case and I had those feelings, I would view that as a problem for me to overcome on my own, rather than making it someone else's problem by complaining to them about it, as the husband does in this case. So I think to me that is where the real moral weight of this case comes in. Oh, I missed the ages. Yeah, I doubt it's much work to babysit the kids. Yeah, if they were younger kids, that would be one thing, but yeah, it does seem to me these kids are old enough. Apa says, I mean, if it's real, I kind of get that taking care of 2 extra childs can be kind of a burden. I don't think it's too unreasonable to be a bit upset about it if you have to do it really frequently. Yeah, I guess we don't know exactly how frequent it is, but I'm thinking, like, if the kids are just, like, there at his house, and, like, he's able to, like, do, like let's say that he has some of his own work that he works on, whether it's, like, you know, reading or writing or doing various projects around the house. Yeah, it's just a little hard for me to see how that would be such a burden. I mean, I guess you could say maybe it's a burden in that, like, when Walter's daughters are there, like, he can't maybe go out and, like, run errands. Like, he's maybe a little more tied down to the home than he would normally be. But I also want to say, like, given that Walter is paying for the wife's dinners already, and is apparently the husband likes that he gets to save time, like not having to go to like nice restaurants with his wife, seems to me like it more than balances out. But that's just my verdict. I could be wrong about that. I do think one area where maybe further information would help us to give a verdict on this case is the case does say that the husband, doesn't like going to the movies with them, and also doesn't like, I forget exactly where he says it in the case, but yeah, he's refused the restaurant invitations because it's too expensive. And so I think one thing that we would be helped if we knew is whether the husband like does anything special at all with his wife. Because if not, then it seems like he's definitely neglecting her. But perhaps, you know, he does special things with her in other ways. And this is where I think sometimes some of the comments on the case are a little quick to make assumptions. They assume like, oh, like you don't do anything with your wife, and like you're clearly neglecting her. And to me, that seems just a little quick. Because for all we know, like maybe they go out and play golf, like maybe they go out and do like, you know, some other activities that are just, you know, not going to nice restaurants. Maybe they go out and hike sometimes, you know, maybe there are a number of things that they could do. But the case just doesn't say. But yeah, I do want to say, given that Walter is already paying for the wife's dinner at fancy restaurants, expect him to pay a babysitting fee on top of that just seems a little excessive. I can understand the resentment, but at the same time, it feels like a situation he kind of caused, or is letting happen. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that way of putting it, Ro. That does seem fair. It's like he's the architect of his own suffering here. So with all that in mind, let's start a tally, chat. We're just going to call this call this Axaeon's verdicts. And again, no one here has to agree with me because these are cases that involve some degree of controversy. But just to keep a rough tally of the cases, you could say, yeah, this one, what should we title this case? Suppose we could call it, yeah, guy who wants to be paid for for babysitting his daughter and her friends. Yeah, I think that's a nice way. I was trying to think if there was like a shorter way to title it, but I think that's probably the most concise I can manage at this moment, at least. The daughter and... oops, supposed to say her. Yep, and her friends. So the verdict for that case, I suppose, would be like, yes, like you're complaining about this to Walter and then like expecting him to pay. It does seem kind of like a low move. So yes, YTA, you're the asshole. Although maybe I wouldn't put it quite that way if I were talking to him in real life about this. I might just say, yeah, you know, I think there are some considerable reasons against this. Maybe you ought to rethink your approach. But if we're putting it in terms of the subreddit itself, then I think we would go with YTA. When you say it'd be a problem to overcome on your own, out of curiosity, would you still say that if the babysitting arrangement were foisted on you rather than it being a result of your turning down the invitation? That's a good question. Yeah, if it were foisted on me, I think I would still feel to an extent that it's something I ought to overcome on my own. Though maybe not, I perhaps wouldn't have quite as strong a duty to overcome it on my own if the babysitting arrangement were foisted on me. Yeah, I suppose that's how I would feel about it. Outsourcing, yeah. Actually, I could have titled the case that, like the outsourcing your wife case. Yes, YTA. Surely there are situations in which it is sensible to voice concerns about unfair treatment, just maybe not this one with the way it's presented. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's a fair way of putting it. I'm here, salutations. Oh, well, salutations to you too, Jinx. Yes, welcome, welcome as always. So chat, that is case number 1. Case number 2 is called, Am I the asshole for reminding my friend that just because she's poor doesn't mean I am? Here's the link to this one, by the way, in case anybody wants to follow along for this case. So just because she's poor doesn't mean I am. I think this one's a little shorter. I'm going to go ahead and read it out loud. I, 20 female, am enrolled in the laundry program at school, where I pay a lump sum, and they do my laundry for me all year. It's very popular at my university, and they pick it up from my dorm weekly. My friend, 21, is weirdly obsessed with this and constantly comments on it for some reason. She always comes over and sees my bag, and has some random comment to say. She'll say, "How could anyone pay for all that?" To which I always say, "Why would I ever do something I don't want to if I could just pay someone else to do it for me?" I'm wondering if she's like this to everyone, because that would explain why she has so few friends. Almost everyone I know uses the laundry program. Her unwanted comments make me like her less. She did it again and was like, "What a waste of money. The laundry program is ridiculously expensive and no one can afford that." I simply said that I don't find it expensive at all, and that she finds it expensive because she's poor. I'm not, so I'll continue paying for the program. She is furious that I called her poor, but she is. It's just a fact. Am I the asshole? Oh, she has an edit to the case too, a follow-up. She writes, "Lol at all the bitter people. It's unfortunate that her parents don't take care of her like they should, but that's not my problem. I'm not her mom and dad. They're responsible for their kid." I kind of wish that edit wasn't in the case, because I think that that might bias some of us, maybe unduly bias some of us, if it were just if the case were described without that. But what do you think, chat? Thoughts on this case? Is this person being a jerk because she called her friend poor? In this case. See, we have some strong feelings about this already in the chat. But first, I want to make sure I address your comment, Tia, earlier. You said, out of curiosity, how would you resolve that situation on your own? I think I'd have to accept that it's a choice between either watching the scary movies and babysitting. Yeah, I think so too. Like, I think if I were the husband in that case, I would just accept that, yeah, the babysitting is something I have to do, and I should look on the bright side and realize it's not as bad as I'm making it out to be. She's not the asshole for paying for the laundry service, but she's the asshole just in general. The good old class divide. YTA, AA. Because of the title. Okay. Wow. So some pretty strong feelings about this one in the direction of like, yes, like this is a YTA type case. And I think some of that is reflected in the comments. Like if we look at some of the comments on this case, let's see if chat, or let's see if the Reddit commenters agree with you. We agree with you, chat. Though Penbu says everyone sucks here. That's an interesting verdict too. Well, this first one agrees with you, Penbu. So she clearly is jealous and resentful, and you clearly are unempathetic, snotty, and not caring or savvy enough to handle this with any wisdom or grace. Pointing out someone's lack of resources isn't kind. Did you earn that money, or is it your parents who actually pay? I'm surprised you have any friends too. A very firm statement there on the everyone sucks here part. Which I want to say, to me, I don't know if I'm not going to give my verdict just yet, but I will say, to me, the everyone sucks here seems a little bit more plausible than the not the asshole verdict, the NTA verdict. Just because I think if we look back at the comments that the friend left at first, saying that she says, like, how could anyone pay for that? That wasn't the one. Yeah, she said, like, what a waste of money. It is kind of rude to just see that something someone else is buying and say, like, oh, like, what a waste of money that is. Especially just making it as an unsolicited comment. Now, we could argue that perhaps the response was a little excessive when the person called her poor. But it does seem that there is arguably something criticizable about the way both of these people are acting in this case. No one is the asshole here. She is just an expression of capitalism, a victim of the economic system. Does capitalism make us say things like, oh, it's just because you're poor? You could say, oh, that wasn't me. That was capitalism working through me. I'll have to keep that in mind if I'm ever criticized for something that I do that relates to money in some way, or an insensitive comment that I make that relates to money. I'll just say, no, it wasn't me, it was capitalism. Yep. Mom and dad, my foot. Some people don't have parents, and if you make childcare purely the parents' responsibility and not society's, then you just accept that some innocent people go without. Yeah, I think that's a fair point, Tia, with the edit that the person makes when she says, it's unfortunate that her parents don't take care of her like they should. She is assuming a little bit too much here. Like, do we really know the person's situation with her parents? Or are her parents even in the picture? Like, are her parents still alive? I mean, maybe this person knows and we don't, and she just didn't say it in the case, but it seems like absent that kind of knowledge, the person really shouldn't be making assumptions. So yeah, everyone's the asshole here. Well, I think that's a relatively defensible judgment. The reason I say everyone sucks here and not YTA is because the friend is continually commenting on it. If it once, fine, but it sounds like it's pretty often. Yeah, that is something that I also take heavily into account, Penbu. What does ESH mean? It means everyone sucks here. Yeah. Agreed with the everyone sucks here verdict. It's her money and she can just do what she wants with it, but OP's response to her friend in general are just off-putting. Yeah, so that was certainly one comment, one sentiment that was reflected in the comments. I think some of the other were just, oh, here's another everyone sucks here. This is not hard. I hate doing laundry and I'm lucky I have the money to hire somebody else. I got it. You think it's a waste of money. I don't care what you think about my laundry. Stop giving me shit about it. You could shut her down hard without calling her poor. So that seems to be a thought many people. I was like, yes, the other person was being annoying, but maybe you could have had a little bit more tact. I do think There is one, yeah, this one says they're leaning towards YTA. You've been fortunate enough to have generous parents who are willing to support you financially, but this is not the case for all people, even those from upper middle class families. My parents were wealthy. They held every dollar over my head. Not everyone has parents who are willing to help, even if they can. This is kind of like your thought, Tia, the thought that you raised earlier. You need to be more self-aware and empathetic towards other people. Be sensitive and kind, because life always comes full circle. Ultimately, I think both OP and her friend come off as kind of immature. True, yeah, I would agree with that, Ro. Not gonna lie, I low-key used to act like that, but perhaps you could understand knowing I didn't have enough teeth and how that might have influenced my worldview. I see. Sorry you had to go through that, Tia. But yes, I can see how that kind of circumstance would influence one's actions very much. So chat, one thing that I think is interesting about this case, one question that it raises is, naturally people are being very hard on the original poster, the OP, in the comments, but there is a part of me that makes me think maybe it's a bit less clear-cut. At the very least, there is an interesting question here about whether the fact that we find it rude to call someone poor suggests that we ourselves view money as something important to a person's character. Because I'm thinking, if we really truly thought that how much money someone has is not an important part of someone's character, would it be an insult to call someone poor? So to raise the question in a different way, here's one way of putting it. I'd like to think that if I were poor, which maybe in some ways I am, I've never been a high-income person, but at the same time, I'm certainly not the kind of person, like I have many things to be very fortunate for, including economically, but like I'm certainly not wealthy. But let's just imagine, like, if I were considerably poorer than I in fact am, then if a friend of mine pointed that out, if a friend of mine said, like, you know, in context, if it somehow made sense, if the topic was money and the friend said, yeah, you know, Axaeon, you're kind of poor, I'd like to think that I wouldn't be offended by that. And there's a part of me that thinks if I were offended by having it pointed out to me that I was poor, then that would be a problem with me and not with what the friend said. So that's a feeling that I think has a pretty large sway over my thoughts, that intuition that would be a me problem, not a problem with my friend there. In this case, I think the fact that the friend brought it up in the first place multiple times and was being rude about it, some would also argue maybe there's a sense in which the friend has given up any claim not to have it pointed out, not to have it pointed out that she's poor. So with the caveat, though, that like the original poster might have sensed that pointing out that the friend is poor would bother the friend, and maybe this was part of her motivation for calling her poor, like maybe just indulging her spite, indulging her frustration. And if so, then I think that's an unfortunate motivation to have. I do think it speaks ill of her character, but to me that's a separate matter from the words themselves. Like, I think we can judge the morality of the action itself independently from how good or bad the person's motivations might have been for engaging in it. Yeah, if OP just said something along the lines of, it's my money and how I spend it is none of your business, so please drop it, I'd say not the asshole. Yeah, that's an interesting... I think there are a lot of people who, on this case, they feel that the OP would have been justified in giving some kind of rebuke, but they feel like calling the other person poor crosses the line. What's interesting, in my opinion, is just the question of, like, why does calling her poor cross the line? Like, what is it about that that is so offensive? If not that we somehow, at some level, think of money as being important to a person's character in a way that we perhaps shouldn't. Oh, Zero, hello! Welcome! Welcome to the stream, Zero. Always nice to see you. Capitalism is involved here. I called it before anyone... I was right. Okay, but yes, this case does very much involve capitalism. I think you're right about that. In my opinion, the sticking point isn't the word poor, but the lack of empathy and mild victim blaming. I see. Yeah, I think that's an interesting observation, because we could say, like, okay, maybe if she had just chosen her words a little bit differently, but still used the word poor, if she had said like, hey friend, I understand it might seem like a lot of money to you, this laundry program, with all due respect to you, I think that might be because you are poor, but I recognize that how much money you have or don't have is not necessarily your fault, and it also doesn't bear on your character. Like if she had said something like that, and admittedly it would be hard to word that in a way that seems tactful and that, you know, spares everyone's feelings, but I do think there is something along those lines that she could have said. Did the OP ever consider that maybe the friend would have stopped the first time if OP had shown empathy then? True, yeah, she might have. And that's always, I think, the best way to respond to cases like these, is to, even if someone's being a little bit rude, try to have your first response be extra gracious and, you know, show empathy, show kindness, and very often that will solve the problem on its own. But if the person keeps it up after that, then perhaps you can be a little bit firmer. I think also the way she speaks in the post makes it difficult to say she's not an asshole. Yeah, on your question, Jinx, AH stands for asshole here. Like that would explain why she has few friends and lol at all the bitter people. yeah, the way that, and that's part of the reason why I brought up earlier that, yeah, this edit I think is easy. It can easily be taken in a way that I think biases us about the case. Though maybe it's not an unfair bias, maybe it's actually just a genuine clue. But yeah, I think that this edit made a lot of people in the comments less sympathetic to this person. I think the contrast of the wording "you're poor, I'm not," that also might be fueling the fire as well. Perhaps. But I wonder, could just the sheer truth of the statement be a defense here? Like, let's just suppose that the statement is true. Was it just that she was too blunt? Is that the source of the problem? Because I know I'm inclined to think that if something is true, then I'm not saying that it's never wrong to say something that's true. Like there's of course a time and a place for certain things, and sometimes you can be in the wrong for bringing up something that's true just because it's like maybe there's no good reason to do it, and maybe it just causes someone, you know, unnecessary pain or unnecessary embarrassment to bring it up. But also I think like if something is in fact true, then that's very often is at least a partial defense of saying something like this. Someone who can often be blunt, yes, I think the bluntness is definitely a factor. I see. Friend is not a bad person because she's lower income, maybe for unwanted comments, but not her income. Right. But then, so yeah, I think that's absolutely right, Ro. But then, like, I want to ask, well, okay, if she's not a bad person for being low income, then why do we view it as such an insult to point that out? Like, part of me thinks if we regard it as such an insult to be called poor, maybe that reveals that our feelings about income and self-worth are maybe a little more bound up than they need to be. And I'm not, to be clear, I'm not saying that that's the case for anyone here, but just as a very general matter, I think that if we find it an insult to be called poor, to me that does raise the question of, okay, why do we find it such an insult? Is it because we think that money is a reflection of someone's character? I'd say that she fits the stereotype of a clueless rich person. Yeah, well, this edit, I think especially, yeah, makes her seem to fit that stereotype, so that is fair. She does come across that way in the post, which is, I think, what's kind of inclining more people toward that sort of verdict on her. So chat, my overall verdict in this case is that while I do think there's some evidence that she was badly motivated, like some evidence that maybe she said this because she knew it would bother the other person, and she was just feeling kind of frustrated with her friend and sort of acting out of spite, and I think that that's bad. If we look at the words themselves, I'm inclined to say Intia. I'm inclined to say not the asshole. I think my verdict on this case is maybe a little bit friendlier toward her than in most of the comments on the original post. But with the caveat that I could see myself coming around and being persuaded to everyone sucks here. So in this case, I'll just call it calling one's friend poor. Yeah, to me, that's going to be an NTA, which I realize is kind of a maybe somewhat controversial verdict about this case. But I am, I think, closer to that view than to any of the others. But with the caveat that everyone sucks here is also, I think, at least somewhat defensible. Like, I think there's a good case to be made for that. I'm just ultimately a little more sympathetic to not the asshole. So that is Axaeon's verdict on this case. But let us move on. Let us continue. Next case, and this is, I think, truly one of the classics. I think if you go to like the cases and like most upvoted by all time, admittedly I haven't checked recently, but I think this is one of the ones that, at least for a time, was either the number one or like very close to the top. Am I the asshole because I ate more than my quote, my share of a 6-foot party sub last night? Yes, this is the infamous party sub post here. What I thought would be a total non-issue and has ballooned into a huge problem, and I'm up at 7:05 a.m. dealing with it. Oh no. I figured while I wait for a text, I could post here to see if what I did was really that bad. I'm a big fat ass. There's no... Oh, sorry. You're all right. I keep forgetting to send you the links. I'm sorry about that. Here you go. Okay. I'm a big fat ass. There's no way around it. What a lovely sentence. I love to eat, which probably borders on addiction, but I figure since I'm only hurting myself, it's probably better to just live my life. I have some great friends, although there is no doubt I'm the harmless, funny token fat guy of an otherwise pretty good-looking group. I guess that sets the stage enough. Last night, my friend hosted UFC, and I was invited. He got a 6-foot party sub. I also brought homemade wings that are sort of my specialty. Well, of course people flocked to the food, and I had basically one serving of the sandwich, but people devoured my wings, and I didn't get to have a single one. Which is totally fine. That's why I brought them. But maybe an hour later, I was starving. I kept eyeing the sandwich, and I'd say there was about 3 feet of it left. I waited an hour, then another half hour, and no one had touched it. But they were still munching on chips, pretzels, and whatnot. So I was like, screw it. I took about half of what was left and ate it. Then the last half sat for another 10 to 15 minutes, and no one said anything, so ate the rest. Well, to be sure, as I was swallowing the last bite, the host's girlfriend asked where the sandwich was. Like I was the guilty party, pretty much everyone pointed at me. I guess they'd noticed me eating the sandwich. She was furious and said that I was an incredible pig and that I had been super selfish to eat 3 feet of a sandwich. I felt so bad. I tried to explain to her that I really did wait over an hour and thought people had lost interest. I also tried to explain how everyone had ate my wings, and she said something along the lines of, "You brought them to share, Alan. If someone had eaten over half by themselves, that's not fucking sharing, is it?" I offered to order pizza or even go get Subways, and she said that it was a pathetic offer because the party sub had been from a local shop owned by her friends. I said I was sorry, but the night was so tense from then on out. I woke up this morning to several texts from my twin sisters, the host's girlfriend's best friends, saying that I had to get my shit under control and that everyone is really mad at me and that I embarrassed myself last night. I tried to explain to them what my mindset had been, and they haven't responded. Was I the asshole for eating that much of the sandwich last night? What a classic case this is. Thoughts on this case, chat? What would you say? What would you say to this person if they asked you for your verdict on this case? Ooh, some people are saying they remember this case. Oh snap, this one. Yes, I remember this one. Never mind, I have to go. I vote NSH. Oh, is that like no assholes here? Verdict early? Well, anyway, Apa, thanks for tuning in. I know you're probably not here anymore, but thank you for registering your vote early. Can I ask you a question? If I were struggling not to be able to pay for something and someone else didn't understand how I could be having that problem, would you understand why I might feel... Oh, I guess some of these are going back to the older case. I see. I'll address your comment in just a second, Tia. But yeah, I probably should... I see we have... While I was reading the case, yeah, some people posted some interesting thoughts on the previous one. Well, there's nothing wrong with being disabled, but there's plenty of people who use it as an insult. I think it's just the fact that negative identifiers have been constantly weaponized against people. Yeah, that's an interesting parallel, that maybe with being maybe being disabled is a case of how, like, there's nothing, it's not a mark against one's character in any way to be disabled, but nevertheless we can at least imagine certain cases of a person using it as an insult, like if they lash out by pointing out another person's disability in a way that's intended to cause hurt, then yes, I would say that's a very bad thing. So yeah, I guess you could say maybe in the case of being poor, perhaps it's a bit similar. I do think one potential difference is that in the case of the person who was in the previous case, who called her friend poor, part of me wants to say, like, we don't know for sure if her motivation was spiteful. Although, given some of the things she says later, it seems like maybe it was. So we can at least judge then if her motivation was indeed to cause hurt, then that does not speak very well of her as a person, having that motivation. So yeah, I guess in the case of, like, the being disabled, like plenty of people who use it as an insult, I wonder if the problem there is with the words themselves, or is it more just with the person's motivation for using the words? I guess that's what I would say about that parallel. Jinx says, you know the whole hype on needles and dumplings, right? It's kind of the same with money. It's not a matter of saying you don't have much, it's more like you're being compared to someone else. Being compared to someone tends to hurt more than just being insulted. Okay. But there, I guess my question would be if... unless we think that the comparison reveals something important about the moral character of the people involved, or the relative moral character, like, why would it hurt to be compared to someone else along that dimension? I guess to me that would be the remaining question there. But maybe there's a good answer that could be given. I don't want to suggest that there isn't. But yeah, on your question, Tia, if I were struggling with not being able to pay for something, and someone else didn't understand how I could be having that problem, would you understand how I might feel hurt? Well, I think I would understand feeling hurt from the fact that the other person lacks empathy, and that they might not understand how you could be having that problem. Now, if they just pointed out that you were having that problem, like if they just pointed out in this hypothetical case, you know, that you were poor, then I would want to say maybe we would need more information to know, like, if this person really does lack empathy for your problem. But I would say that, yeah, if they do in fact lack that empathy, then I can understand how that might feel a little alienating. I think Apa meant no assholes here. Oh, okay, I see. Yeah, I think you're right about that, Pinboo. Leaning, you're the asshole because he could have asked, hey, anybody else want more before I polish it off, rather than going forward with it silently. Seems to me like common courtesy. I mean, when you put it like that, that does seem like such a practical solution to this case. Yeah, like, why didn't he just ask the others? I think that things would have gone much better if he had done that. I think I might also go no assholes here, but maybe also info, because I feel like the girlfriend came out of nowhere, and we don't know how much, we don't know how the sandwich was presented to the guests. Yeah, let's see, I think near the beginning, you say, okay, it was a 6-foot party sub. I'm guessing once they brought it, like, people were aware that it was there, but maybe they had been planning to start eating it after the fight was over, like after they had finished watching the fight on TV. Because he says, like, near the beginning, they had the wings, apparently, but then maybe they were leaving the sandwich for later, is the impression. Oh, well, except I guess some of them did eat the sandwich, because he does say, yeah, there were about 3 feet of it left. So this was like a really big sandwich, and he ended up eating half of it. Wait, hour, then another half hour, no one had touched it. They were still munching on chips, pretzels, and whatnot. Took half of what was left and then ate it. To me, one important fact is that then the last half sat for another 10 to 15 minutes, which is maybe, like, it seems like it's not quite that long to judge, like, oh, like nobody's going to be interested in afterwards, so I'll just go ahead and eat the rest. I think that was one key point, perhaps, where he could have asked the others. But yeah, in the comments, yeah, there was a lot of verdicts saying, "You're the asshole. Eat before you go to a party so you don't do that again. I'm also a heavy eater. I'd never even consider eating that much of something at a party or get together. Letting it sit for an hour doesn't mean anything. Others might have been just waiting to grab it after the fight. You said in a comment you polished it off during the fight. The wings prove the point. You were bummed that others ate all the wings and you didn't get a chance to have any, just like the people complaining about the sandwich they brought." So very harsh. This person says that the friend has a good point. If someone eats over half by themselves, that's not sharing. She has a good point. You ate a ridiculous amount of food. It sounds like this is an ongoing problem based on your sister's response. So Chad, I'll just say for me, one caveat that I feel about this case is that I think the person involved genuinely did not have any bad intentions. Which is maybe one thing that makes me at least reluctant to say that, like, yes, this person is the asshole or was the asshole in this case. I think this is just someone who has a real problem with overeating and got carried away in that moment. So in that respect, I do find it a somewhat sad case, and I hope, of course, that this person gets help or, you know, got whatever help they needed. But perhaps the main reflection I have about a case like this is, like, in light of all that, the word asshole is such a strong word, such a strong accusation, that it almost suggests bad intentions. Like, it almost suggests that, like, the person was intending to do harm, as opposed to a less extreme word like rude. And I think part of that is because the word or the accusation of being an asshole, it naturally applies to the person themselves. Like, we say, oh, like, that guy is an asshole, or that guy was an asshole. Whereas if we say that something was rude, very often that's not applied to the person themselves. It can be applied to particular actions. We might say, like, oh, that action was rude, or oh, that behavior was rude. And so in this case, to me, it might just feel a little harsh to say, like, oh, this person was an asshole. I think maybe he was, like, sure, it was rude, but I don't know, something about the word asshole just feels a little too extreme, even though, like the action was criticizable in a certain way. Oh, also, TP Ninja, welcome. Would you say that, alright, case number 2, you're basing your judgment more on the raw words being spoken and not considering the state of mind of the participants? Oh no, now I don't know if by case 2 we're referring to the party subcase or the case of, like, the person not having empathy from earlier. But yeah, if it's the person not having empathy earlier, which I think it is the case you're referring to there. Yeah, I think the natural question there, at least one way of putting it, is, like, was this an okay thing to say? And when it comes to that kind of question, I tend to focus on the words themselves. If we're asking, like, was the person in a morally virtuous state of mind? I think that's also an important question. Like, were they in a morally virtuous state of mind when they said this thing? But to me, that seems like I guess a slightly different question. Like, I think the answers to those two questions can come apart. Part of me thinks it might be fake because it feels like it's just perpetuating stereotypes about fat people. But yeah, OP eating half a party sub is wild. Yeah, this one, it's hard to say for sure whether it's real or fake. It might be just a troll. But then, like, I feel like there are people who can and would do this kind of thing. This is coming from someone who's definitely on the overweight side. I see, yeah. I don't know whether this case is real, but somehow it's not hard for me to believe. I could imagine this case being real pretty easily. I was wondering what the video title was referring to. Now I understand. That's right, yep. Asking because I find I often factor people's emotional states in when judging a situation. I see. Yeah, and you're not alone in that, T. I think that is a way that many people think when it comes to judging these things. Pimbu says, OP does clarify in the comments that they did ask the rest of the guests before taking the last quarter. Okay, I did not know that. That is helpful to know. Thank you for mentioning that, Pinbu. So in that event, and admittedly, I don't know which comment it is where he says that, but it kind of surprises me then that there was much controversy about this case, because like if he asked, and like presumably people didn't say no and he just ate it anyway, like if he asked, I'm just assuming that the rest of the people said like, yeah, it's okay, you can go ahead and eat the rest, then like what's the problem here? You know, like if they told him he could, then why is this an issue? The way that the original case is described makes it sound like the controversy is that he ate all this without asking people like if he could, and then they thought that he ate too much. But like if he asked them and they said it was okay, then I feel like they have only themselves to blame. So yeah, really that one, that does significantly update the case, that information you just shared, Pembu. In normal cases, asshole is a pretty strong word, but I feel like in asshole, the term asshole usually just means in the wrong, whether intentional or not. Yeah, it might be like as a result of reading the subreddit, like the people who read the subreddit a lot might be so inured to the word asshole that maybe it no longer seems as strong as it does to someone who isn't exposed to it as much. Maybe for them it just means am I in the wrong? Which to me, I would want to say then, like I wonder if the title of the subreddit could be better. But maybe like if it were called Am I in the Wrong, maybe the impact just wouldn't be the same, you know? Maybe it just wouldn't be a hard enough impact to make people care. Like when it comes to the question, oh, like was I in the wrong in that interaction? We might wonder, like think, okay, like, you know, yeah, maybe I was in the wrong, but like who cares? But if it's, was I the asshole there? It's, oh, well, like clearly I don't want to be the asshole. Like I better figure this out. So maybe it's just a matter of having enough oomph, enough of an impact on people's psychologies. Maybe that's why they chose that title. But yeah, TP Ninja says, I think in the context of my asshole is used really freely. True, yeah. I didn't register to me until I was 6 foot sub is as long as a person is tall. That's right, yeah. This is a big sub. Big sub for a big boy. If Leon were here, he'd say he relates to the fat dude, while I'm the one who gets on his case for not communicating clearly. Oh, so Leon's a fan of subs, huh? Yeah, fair enough. That's a funny case to imagine, you getting on his case about not communicating clearly. But yeah, maybe they didn't hear because the party was loud. Yeah, I think that maybe if it's one of those cases where like he like asks and they kind of like see him out of the corner of their eye and like barely hear him, and like they're mostly focused on the fight, so they just go like, oh yeah, like okay, yeah, like sure, like have whatever you want, and they're not really thinking about it. But then once the fight's over and they go to the kitchen, they see, oh, like he actually polished off the entire rest of the sandwich. Then maybe it was a case like that. Maybe that's why they got mad. I did say, hey, does anyone want more of this? But in retrospect, no one responded since they were watching. Oh, okay. So that's how it went down. No one responded since they were watching the fight. I did say it loud enough for everyone to hear if they wanted to, though. Okay. So thanks, Pinboo, for finding that. Yeah, I think that gives some vital context. So in his mind, he was thinking, okay, like I asked them, so, you know, doesn't that make it okay? But it sounds like even if it was loud enough for them to hear, like they didn't register the question, they were focused on something else instead. And so I think, yeah, the OP was definitely in the wrong for presuming their consent, like thinking that they tacitly consented to his eating the rest of the sandwich just from the fact that they didn't say no when he asked if they could have more. Probably like they just weren't paying attention. So I think that the thing to do there would have been to like maybe wait till like a lull, like wait till like a moment in between one of the rounds, and then talk about, and then ask them, okay, like, hey everyone, now that I can have your attention, like, can I have the rest of the sandwich? That would have been the right thing to do. Dang, I guess I can't eat a 6 foot sub on my own at once. Yeah, neither could I, TP Ninja. We're both in that club. Neither could I. Maybe together, though, we could polish it off. I found OP's comment. He did ask, but nobody responded, so he went ahead and ate it anyway. Sticking by the YTA verdict as just because they didn't say no doesn't mean they explicitly gave permission. I think that is very well put, Ro, and yes, I agree with that wholeheartedly. That said, when I was young, my family saw me as the fat dude, so I've been on both sides of the fence. Oh, I see. Yeah, it's a tough case because, like, again, if this guy were to come to me and tell me, like, Axaeon, like, what should I have done? I absolutely would not be harsh on this guy. I might tell him, like, yeah, like, that wasn't the best way of going about it. But I think, like, what would be most helpful to someone like this is a friend who's really empathetic and really supportive and tries to help, cheer him up and cheer him on. And I think that that was something he really didn't get from the friends at the party. He got just the sort of pure frustration. And while their frustration is perhaps understandable, I think what would most help someone like this is someone who maybe takes a bit of a lighter approach to it. Someone responded to OP, did they confirm you asked? To which OP replied, no, I don't think anyone heard me. Okay, yeah. Yeah, well, at least he's honest about relating all this, but yeah, that does make his action harder to defend. More importantly, was the sub good? I mean, like, if everyone would have enjoyed it, or heck, even eaten it, would there be that much of the sub left? Yeah, I'm thinking the sub probably was pretty good, since they seem upset that he ate so much of it. Like, it seems like it was something they were looking forward to eating. Yeah, as Pinbu says, it was from a local shop, so I would assume it was good. I'm not saying what they did was right, I'm just thinking it's not much of a loss. They even offered to get more food, so calling Massel is kind of extreme. Yeah, I think one of the things that most helps their case is that they did offer to get more food. So, and that's part of the reason why a word like asshole to me just feels maybe a little too harsh, is that I think this person did not have any bad intentions, and I think that they are basically a good person who just sort of got carried away in this one moment. Also, I have to say, OP says in his edit, I can down 5 subway footlongs in an afternoon easily, which is both impressive and concerning. Yeah, like, clearly this is one of those cases of someone who needs some help, I would say. And we know this was 6 years ago, so we don't know for sure like what happened after this to Big Jelly Belly. I guess the username checks out. But my hope is that in the end, he either found some really supportive friends, or that maybe his friends were able to, support him in some way. And maybe the story had a happy ending, I would especially like to think maybe this moment was the start of a more positive path for him, like a path forward to maybe having a better approach to food. Like, maybe this is what helped him turn his life around. We don't know for sure, but that is part of the optimist in me, that I like to think like maybe it all worked out for the best in the end. Wait, why are you reading my asshole story? I'm sorry, Leon. I didn't mean to embarrass you. I didn't know it was yours, but anyway, yeah, kudos for the honesty, Leon. And we were just saying, yeah, like we hope you found some like really good and supportive friends after this. I'm big on fairness, so I could see myself being critical toward him. I had a really bad experience like this in high school, where the rich kids hogged multiple slices at once, while I, who was starving, had one. Oh, I see. Yeah, I can see how that would be a really harsh thing to experience. Yeah, I think if you were there, Tia, I imagine you being like critical of him, but also in the end saying like, how can I help? You've given like the justice treatment, but also your classic empathy and helping him out. That's at least how I imagine you going about it. Clunks an asshole because of a sandwich is crazy. Yeah, which that is actually going to be, I think, how I sort of put my verdict on it. So if we just scroll down a little bit here, this case, we're gonna call this one, yeah, party sub guy. I think my verdict on this one is going to be technically like NTA, because like the asshole's maybe just a little too harsh, a little too strong, like, but come on, like, that wasn't very considerate, which is maybe just what you're the asshole means. So maybe I'm contradicting myself here. So like, not technically the asshole, but like, come on, like, yeah, like there's a real problem here, dude. So that would be my way of putting my verdict on this case. CX, I told you he'd relate. Yes, you did. You know Leon very well, Tia. The pizza offer was called pathetic because the party sub had been from a local shop owned by her friends. So there's likely more sentimental value in that sub that pizza alone can't replace. True. Yeah, I think in that moment, like, he was trying everything he could to make it right, but sadly, it just wasn't enough. Given that it was from a local shop owned by her friends, there was nothing more he could do. God, you know me well. Indeed, indeed. Then order another sub. Well, that would be the natural reaction, the natural response. The fact that they don't list that as an option makes me think that it's probably already closed. Like, especially if this is at night when they're watching this UFC fight, maybe it's too late. Like if the place is already closed. At least that was how I interpreted it when I first read it. Honestly, I have a thing where I hate eating all of a particular thing at any event or just too much of it. Yeah, no, I'm the same way, Leon. Like if there's food around for everyone, I always try to make sure that like everyone else has enough before I, eat my share. Or if it looks like there's not going to be enough, I'll kind of hold back. So I think we're kind of alike in that regard. Calling the last case, I think fat is another example of a word that can either be used objectively or pejoratively, and the intent and context matter. That I think is an especially good example to you, because there's no doubt that fat is very often used as an insult, but then sometimes it's used in a way that doesn't seem insulting, like when a person uses it to describe themselves. And I know there are many people of the relevant body type who actually strongly prefer the word fat compared to overweight, because overweight has a normative component to it, of like having too much weight. It's just built into the word, whereas fat doesn't have that normative component. So yeah, there are all kinds of nuances when it gets into the language on that, absolutely. Pimbu says to Jing, sure, but we don't know if the place needs extra notice or to make one, or if they're already closed. Yeah, exactly. That's very fair points there. I'm thinking they probably already closed, but yeah, at the very least, even if they weren't closed, maybe they just needed more notice. Also, since it's a party sub, I assume it's something you have to order in advance. Yeah, it can't just be made on the fly. Yeah, apparently the party subs, and I'm maybe like the worst person to ask about this because I do not know much about party subs, but from what I've heard, apparently they're like special in some way. They're like extra loaded with stuff. So maybe they need extra notice to make one of those. It's kind of a big job for them, putting together one of these party subs. But chat, speaking of food, interestingly enough, when I was browsing cases for this subreddit to look at, a lot of these cases have to do with food in some way. I'm not sure why, but this next one has to do with food too. Am I the asshole for asking a neighbor if she wanted to share food? Let's see what this case is. The title seems relatively unassuming. Oh wait, gotta send the link. Not gonna forget this time, chat. Here's the link. Here's the link in chat. So the title seems relatively harmless, relatively unassuming, but let's see what the case actually says about this one. I'm a 31-year-old single guy who lives alone in an apartment complex. I've lived there for 6 years. My neighbor across the hall, a woman around my age or a little younger, I actually don't know her first name, but I'll call her Katie, lives across the hall from me diagonally and has for about 2 years. We exchange hellos, but aren't friendly, which is how it is with most of my neighbors. So I don't know how to cook, and due to losing one of my part-time gigs, I don't have as much money for takeout anymore. I'm getting really sick of eating cheap fast food or boxed mac and cheese. I'm gaining weight, and I never feel great. This is where Katie comes in. I can always smell her cooking in the hall, and it always smells amazing. I know it isn't the other person at our end of our hall, because it's a single old man. I've even complimented it a few times. So I got the idea that I'd offer to give her some money each week to cook a little extra and bring it over to me. Or I can pick it up from her at night. She's cooking anyway, and then I'd have varied, presumably delicious food. I asked her the next time I saw her, and she looked surprised and said she couldn't because she was too busy. Which didn't make sense because she cooks almost every day, but okay. The next time I saw her a few days later, I asked her if she was sure and upped the amount I was offering, and she said she was sure, and that it was rude to ask me, and that she isn't a housekeeper for hire, and I should get a housekeeper if that's what I want. She also called me a stranger, even though we have talked in the halls before. Overall, she made me feel like a big jerk, and really embarrassed me for even asking her, and a little mad because she was acting like I was being creepy. I wasn't, trust me, she isn't my type. I think asking her to split cooking wasn't completely outlandish, since she cooks every day anyway, and it wouldn't be hard to make a little more. So that is the case, chat. What are your thoughts? What are your verdicts? He does give an edit a little bit down below, but I think I'm going to refrain from reading it for right now. Although I suppose you could read it if you click the link and follow it on your own. But in the edit, he kind of comes to share like his own updated verdict on the case, and I don't want that to bias us too much, so I'll just kind of leave the case at that for now. But what do you think? Is this is this a you're the asshole case? Asking her neighbor if she wanted to share food, offering to pay his neighbor for food. Leon says, I legit have a Reddit comment from Am I the Asshole with about 500 plus upvotes, so I'm a legit top tier Am I the Asshole poster. Congratulations, Leon. 500 upvotes, that's pretty significant. By the way, it bears mentioning that Ax and Leon are both very thoughtful and gentlemanly. They deserve all of love and... Oh, well, thank you, Tia. I'm glad you think that we're both gentlemen. Yes, I'm sure we both certainly try in our own ways. Reminds me of that one story where the title was, Am I the Asshole for refusing to eat my partner's family's cultural food? It just turns out he's vegan and the food they made had meat. Oh, I see. Yeah, certainly that's a case where we'd want to say like, oh yeah, probably not the asshole in that case. But yeah, you raise in a good question, Jinx. Why can't single old men cook? And I think that's where he says, yeah, I know it isn't the other person because it's a single old man. But can't single old men cook? Like, I'm sure there are some single old men who are wonderful cooks out there, you know. Plenty of single old men who are great cooks who could throw something on the grill and it'll be the best thing you've ever tasted. Now, to be fair to the OP, I did read a little bit later. I think he clarifies in one of the comments that the smells of good food started only after Katie moved in, whereas the old single man had lived there longer. So that gives him at least some fairly good evidence that the one doing the cooking is not the single old man. Now, he doesn't specify that in the original post, and he could have, but if we're going to take him at his word, it sounds like that is at least one piece of independent evidence he has that it's not the man who was cooking. Yes, it would be harder to make more. Yeah, well, it would take more effort for her to make more, definitely. To be fair, he does offer to pay her, so that's one thing that maybe is speaking somewhat in his favor. Bro isn't doing himself any favors with his writing. So yeah, you all might have noticed, as I think you have, Lottle, here, that he does give some details that turn many people against him in the comments, where he says, I actually don't know her first name, but I'll call her Katie. I think that rubs some people the wrong way. Like, if we go down and... You're the asshole. Honestly, OP, thank you. So many people on this sub are just struggling for self-awareness, wading through uncharted territory, or trying to figure out how to navigate a complex situation with many moving parts and lasting social repercussions. Sometimes it's hard to know what to say, how to reach them, and especially how to reduce the situation down to a single 3-letter acronym, but you, OP, are a 100% bona fide asshole. Let's count the ways. 1. You're clearly making her extremely uncomfortable. You've caused her to feel like she has to walk on eggshells when leaving and entering her own home, because a strange man down the hall keeps insisting that she cook for him? What the fuck? Hell, she might even feel like you're monitoring her movement in and out of the apartment in order to ambush her about cooking for you, which will obviously creep her the fuck out and make her feel uncomfortable in her own home. 2. Why on earth would you think that you're entitled to this person's cooking? Even if she were your spouse, this would be a problem. And you don't even know her. How did you hear her say no and decide to keep pressing the issue? She's calling you a stranger because you are a stranger. And she's telling you no because no. 3. I know it isn't the other person at our end of the hall because it's a single old man. Damn, dude. Fuck off with that nonsense. You are a jerk, you were being creepy, and you should be way more embarrassed than you are. Stop harassing your neighbor, learn to cook, and leave her the fuck alone. Christ, OP, she said no. Yeah, I get the feeling this person really is not a big fan of the OP here. Nor the 27,000 other people who upvoted this post. So that seems to be very much the I guess the most popular verdict in the chat. Like, this guy really got thrashed in the comments. Oh boy, I remember seeing this one. It's quite entitled, I think if they had to explain themselves better, that they were truly that worried, or refrain from making certain comments throughout the tale. If they were truly that worried, or refrained from making certain comments. I'm not sure what comments you might be referring to there, TP Ninja, but feel free to elaborate if you'd like. We need Leon's professional Am I the Asshole insight. Well, agreed on that point. Leon always has more insight for us. OP wouldn't have been the asshole if he had asked once and dropped afterwards, but continuing to pester about her about it isn't cool. I'm somewhat in agreement with that. I think I'm relatively sympathetic to that row. But I'll give more detail on my own verdict in a moment, but I think that's going in basically the right direction. No assholes here. I think OP is within his right to make an offer, and Katie was in the rights to refuse. But the rude comment makes me think that either something is going over my head or he's leaving something out about his delivery. A very nuanced take, very careful take there, Pinboo. Yeah, I mean, I do think people are being a little bit too harsh on him in the comments. Like, for example, one of the criticisms that this person gives is that he feels entitled to her cooking. And to me, that just doesn't seem like a very reasonable criticism. Like, he offered to pay her for her cooking, but offering to pay someone for something doesn't suggest that you're entitled to it. Like, if anything, the kind of behavior that would suggest you feel entitled to something, like as if you tried to take it by force. But I really don't understand why this person says that he is entitled to it. I think also, like, asking someone a second time just to check if they're sure, and like even increasing the payment offer when one does that also doesn't suggest entitlement. Now, I think for sure, like, he definitely should like drop it after this point. Like, he's asked her once and she said no, and then like he brought it up again and like increased the payment offer and she still said no. I think definitely he should not go further with this. But I do think people are being a little bit harsh by saying that he's entitled here. At least I don't understand the source of that criticism. But it could be, yeah, maybe he left some things off about his delivery. I guess that's something we just don't know. Let's think here. Would it be off color of him to offer a payment to clean his room? I'm inclined to think no. I'm inclined to think, like, if he offered her payment for that, then, you know, she could just say, oh, well, no thanks, I'm not interested. And then that could be the end of it. Yeah, I don't see what the issue would be there. Now, I take it the person he's calling Katie probably would not be happy with that with that offer, because she does say here, she said she was sure and that it was rude to ask me, and that she isn't a housekeeper for hire, and I should get a housekeeper if that's what I want. Yeah, this criticism that like he's treating her as a paid housekeeper also just doesn't seem fair to me. There's also possibly a bit of classism in the criticism itself. Like, oh, you're treating me as a paid housekeeper, and clearly that's beneath me. Like, why are you being so rude? Why are you being so insulting to me by treating me as if I'm a housekeeper? Like, clearly I'm above that. And that to me kind of does, you know, rub me the wrong way. So admittedly, I can't be sure if that's what she's thinking, but like otherwise I'm just not sure why this person would be so insulted at being made this offer, unless there were something kind of classist going on there. I mean, if someone offered to pay me to cook for them, I do not think that I would be insulted. And I think if I did feel insulted, that would be a problem with me. I don't think I would be justified in feeling that way. So I'm really not sympathetic to that criticism that some people in the comments on the original post are raising to the OP as well. Top comment absolutely cooked him. Top comment all the way. Yeah, I mean, the person really did not mince words in that top comment. I think asking if she could teach him or asking about the recipe would be more tasteful. Yeah, I mean, he could have asked her that in addition. I feel like there would have been nothing wrong with asking her that at the same time. I'm not sure I see how it would be any more or less tasteful. I guess I'm inclined to view them as being equally tasteful. Pardon the pun, since we're talking about food here. If y'all don't know each other's names, then yeah, y'all are strangers. Yeah, I mean, I guess it gets tricky to tell what the criteria are for strangers or not. Maybe there's kind of a scale of being a stranger, where on the absolute far end is like someone on the sidewalk whom we've never seen before. This time, yeah, they don't know each other's names, but they have seen each other in the hallway for about 2 years. And presumably this guy hasn't caused any problems for her in all that time. So I feel like, even though they don't know each other's names, I don't know, they're not complete strangers, I want to say. I feel like there's at least something that gives them a little bit more knowledge of each other than if they were complete strangers just passing each other by on the sidewalk. But it's also accurate, of course, to say like they're not friends. Maybe they're not even acquaintances, but maybe there's this like awkward middle space. Awkward middle space between strangers and acquaintances that these people inhabit. So OP objecting to her referring to him as a stranger. OP doesn't even know her first name. Yeah, he doesn't, rhetorically at least, he doesn't do himself any favors when he says he doesn't know her name. But, you know, kudos to him for being honest about it, I suppose. Yeah, Leon's right. Just asking if she had a recipe site she usually refers to or something would already be helpful. Yeah, I think maybe if he ever talks to her about this again, which probably he shouldn't, but if he ever does, maybe he could at least ask her that, and then she could feel like if she shares like a website with him or tells him a website to go to or like a cookbook or something, the name of a cookbook, maybe she'll at least feel like she's given him something, and then he can be out of her hair. Maybe it's a cultural thing. I think in the cultural context, I'm aware of approaching someone who's practically stranger offering to pay for their food is really rude. Oh, interesting. Maybe it is a cultural thing. I'm not sure. So I'd be curious to know like what exactly about it is perceived as rude, or what the justification would be. And yeah, I do agree with you, Tia, when you say, yeah, my husband knows what's what. Very much so. I think unsolicited offer of cook for me and I will pay you can definitely rub some people the wrong way, especially young women, because of the potentially sexist implications. Okay, but what would those sexist implications be? Would it be that like her value is exhausted by her capacity to cook? Because if that's what she's reading into the comment, then my thought would be like that's just reading too much into it. Like offering someone to offering to pay someone to cook for you suggests that you value the prospect of eating their food, like you think their food would be good and so on. But if the other person thinks, oh, like, so you think I'm only good for cooking, then I just want to say, like, look, that's a really uncharitable interpretation. And shouldn't we give people the benefit of the doubt? Like, shouldn't we assume that people are not just raging sexist jerks? Unless they give us some reason to think otherwise. So I don't know if that's how the woman, Katie, in this case, interpreted his words. But if it is, then I think that would just be going too far and reading way too much into it. Like Tia suggested, and the woman did as well, it's like suggesting she's a housekeeper or a maid in Singapore, which is looked down upon in some sense. Well, looked down upon by whom? Like, does she herself, does Katie look down on it? And, like, should she? And does the guy in this case look down on it? I guess in general, this is a good segue to just a more general point, which is that while it can sometimes be true that people in general look down on certain things, to me, the more important question is, should they? Like, is it reasonable for them to look down on it? And if it's not, as I don't think it is in this case, that is, I don't think it would be reasonable, of course, to look down on someone for being a housekeeper, then to me, we shouldn't find it insulting to be made the offer of, you know, doing part of the duties associated with the housekeeper. Pimbu says to Tia, I would say possibly yes, and I see your point, but I would say cleaning his room feels like a different kind of thing too. Completely separate task versus extra effort on an existing task. Yeah, I think that's also a distinction. I didn't really go into this earlier, but I think you're right to bring that up, Pimbu. That the fact that she's already spending some time cooking maybe would make cooking a little extra for this guy a bit less onerous of a task than cleaning his room. So maybe that could be part of the justification, I guess, of asking her about the cooking as opposed to cleaning her room. Ari, entitled, I feel like it's a gender thing. Okay, so my question there would be, how so? But maybe one of the later comments goes into that. I'll have to look up the other ones. Look up Singapore's maid system for context. Yeah, I might do that after the stream. Admittedly, I do not know much about Singapore's maid system. I'm sure some of you on the chat know much more about it than I do. Plot twist. The commenter is Katie. Yeah, that first one does sound like it's probably what Katie would say. Or at least someone who's very much speaking for Katie. That's the sort of thing that came to mind, yeah, as an Asian woman myself. Yeah, it might be an Asian culture thing. Possibly. Only just read Rose last comment, but that exactly. Oh yeah, the potentially sexist implications. Yeah, I'm still struggling to see why there would necessarily be any sexist implications there. Wait, apparently OP only offer $5 a day. That's way too... Oh, okay. So I was not aware of that, but I think now we have one piece of the puzzle from your comment there, Pinboo. If the offer was only like $5 a day, then yeah, that does seem kind of like a low ball offer. So chat, I wonder, maybe what's objectionable about this case is not that he offered to pay her. Maybe what's objectionable is that he offered too little. Like, I wonder if he had offered her something like $30 or $40 or $50 or $60 or more, would she have been as angry with him? Would there have been the same outrage? Maybe there would have been. We don't really know anything about Katie. But yeah, I can see how, to the extent that he didn't really offer her a fair compensation for this, then certainly there is something criticizable about that. I mean, I think considering how he'd be approaching her probably for the first time in that context, I don't think it'd be too far of a stretch to read, since he didn't approach her or get to know her better or anything first. His first proper interaction was asking to pay for her food. Okay, yeah. I mean, I guess I see somewhat. But also, like, he might just not have had much of a reason to approach her earlier, which is not to say that he thought there was nothing valuable to her earlier, but like, I've been in situations like that, living in an apartment building where I might like occasionally run into certain people, but there's just like no particular reason for either of us to reach out to each other, like beyond just saying hi in the hallway. But then, like, if there were some suddenly, like let's say that my neighbors smelled some good cooking coming from my kitchen, and they were like, "Hey, Axaeon," or like, first of all, they're like, "Hey, what's your name?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm Axaeon." I'm like, "Hey, we smelled that good cooking. Like, would you be willing to share some with us if we pay you?" Yeah, like I just don't really see why that would be insulting at all. And further, I will even go so far as to say, I think if I were a woman, I think I would feel the same way. I think I know myself well enough to say that I don't think this is a gender thing. Though I realize that will be controversial. Since there is gender dynamics on cooking, cleaning, and there, this guy just orders fast food and easy eats. Yeah, I mean, one thing we could say about that is, I do, like, if I were to give this guy advice here, I would recommend that he learn to cook. Because I think that would help him out in life in general. So he does seem like he's kind of has his mind closed to learning to cook, but like, and also like to any guys in the chat who might not know how to cook, like I would absolutely recommend it. Not that I know how to cook very well, I just know some basic stuff, but it does help being able to cook things, absolutely. It depends on which country it's from, but $5 a day certainly feels too little. Yeah, I mean, a good point, TP Ninja, about the country maybe changes things somewhat. But yeah, it does feel like a small amount. At least if it's in most of the countries that I'm thinking of right now. Presumably enough for one or more meal, given the situation. Yeah, we would hope he would offer enough for that at least. But if indeed $5 is a good deal less than the amount of a typical meal in whatever society they're in, then yeah, in that case it was just kind of a not very smart thing to offer such a little amount. Cooking extra also means ordering more food, spending more time preparing, more cleaning, potentially more cooking. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair point. And all of that, I think, makes sense to why she might refuse it, like why she might not feel up to cooking extra for him. I just don't think she's reasonable in feeling insulted for it. That's where I would draw the line in this case. Good thinking with the first proper direction, those are pretty bad optics. But are they, though? Are they? I think if somebody, again, to go back to the case of if somebody were like, "Hey, Axaeon, that cooking smelled really good," I think I would just be flattered. And I think, again, that would be the case even if I were a woman. I don't think that judgment depends on my being male. To me, it's just a natural part of, oh, somebody thinks I'm a good cook. Which is a positive thing. I think that sometimes we lose track of that. Should have asked first if he could pay and what would be a fair price. Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with that, but I would also say though, like asking her like what would be a fair price, that kind of does put her in an awkward position, especially if she hasn't thought about it before. Like that's asking a lot of her to like come up with a fair price on the spot. I think if he at least gives her a potential price, then that gives her something to work with in terms of thinking like, is this enough or is it not? I suppose the approach I would be most in favor of is asking her like, hey, here's a potential price, but I'm certainly willing to talk about it and willing to pay a little more depending on what you feel is fair. I'll give you $5. How about it? I like to imagine that's how he said it. Leon's married for a reason. Indeed he is. I don't think it's the amount of money, it's probably the fact that they approached Katie multiple times. It can get really annoying in my opinion. Yeah, well, I would say on that, Jinx, I think if he approaches her more than this, like, because now that he's approached her twice, and like on the second time, even after offering her more money, she still refused. I think if he continues to push the matter, then that is too much. I think he should let it drop now. But I think going up to this point wasn't excessive. Like sometimes people can ask someone something, like they might say like, hey, do you want to play pickleball with me? And maybe they say no. And then like you might ask them later like, hey, are you sure you don't want to play pickleball with me? Like I'm going with some friends. Like, and then if they say no again, like then at that point you shouldn't ask them again. But like there was nothing wrong with just asking them the second time just to check, like to make sure, like if they're really sure that they want to say no. It's crazy what you can do with a rice cooker and pan. Yeah, people I think sleep on certain combinations of food that you could make with rice cookers and so on. I certainly don't know much about rice cookers myself, but I do know about rice. Yeah, and rice goes well with many things. I think she'd be justified in feeling insulted, and that a guy could be justified in feeling justified if a bunch of women just saw him as hired muscle. Your mileage may vary on this, but no double standard, in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, I think like if somebody I think that's a good example to bring up to you. Like if somebody were to come up to me and say like, hey, Axaeon, I could use some help, moving some stuff. I'm willing to pay you for this. Yeah, I don't think I would find, and I'm not saying you were saying this to you, but just here I'm speaking more generally. Like if somebody were to say like, oh, by asking you if she can pay you to move this stuff, she's implying that she thinks of you just as hired muscle. I would want to say like, wait, no, like that's reading way too much into that person's words. Like the fact that she made that offer maybe implies that at least one potentially good or useful thing she sees about me is my muscles, however strong or frail they might in fact be. But I don't see how it would imply that she thinks like that's the main thing that there is to me. Like she could be perfectly aware that there's much more to me than whatever muscle I have to offer. As far as we know, he only asked twice, which I don't think is necessarily unreasonable, ignoring the $5. Any more than that, though, and I would agree. Yeah, I think we're in agreement on this one, Penbu. Sounds like our judgments are kind of aligning. The power of the Japanese rice and sauces in the rice cooker is undefeated. Chat, it's very unlikely that this would happen, but I'd like to think maybe this is the start of a wonderful love story. A wonderful love story where after Katie refuses for the second time, she kind of has some time to like calm down and like, not, or maybe I shouldn't say calm down because it doesn't, I mean, it does suggest she was frustrated with him, but not that she was like, she might have delivered this verdict calmly, but she has some time to like, cool down and to like think about it more and she thinks, okay, maybe I'll at least give him some advice. Like, no way do I want to cook for this guy, but like next time I see him, I'll just mention like, hey dude, you should really learn to cook for yourself and like get a rice cooker and, do some things with that. And then maybe he does it. Like he starts to think, okay, she's right. I should learn to cook for myself. And he goes out and gets the rice cooker and starts looking into some recipes and making some food. And then, chat, after that, maybe she smells his food when she's down the hallway and she thinks, hey, that smells really good. And they start talking more and like bonding over their cooking. And then one day, one fine morning, years later, they find themselves getting married to each other. And it's a wonderful, happy life that they have together and they live happily ever after. I don't think that's likely to happen, but it would be really nice if something like that did happen. I'd like to imagine that happening. from a case like this. She would have a better idea on price than Mr. Mac and Cheese. True. People have different intuitions here, I guess. I haven't said you're the asshole, just saying I could empathize with Katie if that's her reason for rejecting him. I see. So thank you for adding that clarification and that nuance to you. If it was Curry Goat, I'd be throwing my wallet at Katie. So you're a fan of Curry then, I see. A pickleball killed my family. Oh no. Yeah, I gotta watch out while playing pickleball. Apparently it gets pretty intense from what I've heard. I don't know, the comment, she was acting like I was being creepy. I wasn't, trust me, she isn't my type, is rubbing me the wrong way. Like OP intentional or not, has been making Katie uncomfortable. Yeah, I think that and that was one thing that a lot of people in the chat were kind of really getting on his case about was, hey, like the fact that she isn't your type doesn't mean that you weren't being creepy. And so one thing I would say is that a lot depends on how he asked her. Like, for example, if he cornered her and like put his arm against the wall so that she couldn't get past him, and that's how he chose to bring this up to her, then yeah, I agree, that's going way too far, and she's right to call him creepy, and she's right to object to him doing that. But if it was more innocuous than that, if it was just like, you know, passing by her in the hall and saying like, hey, you know, I smelled the food you were cooking the other day, like it smelled really good, I was wondering how you might feel about such and such arrangement, then yeah, I wouldn't see anything wrong with that. I do agree that if we could hear Katie's side of the story, that would help us to make a judgment here. What did I just hear? Whoa, Axe, that went far. Sometimes my imagination just gets carried away, you know? I would totally read a story you wrote, Axe. Oh, thank you, Lottle. That means a lot. Well, I am currently writing a story and have some stories in mind for future things on the stream. So I look forward to sharing those with you all someday. They probably won't be exactly like the story that I just shared. They'll be a little different. But I do like imagining stories. The often issue with Am I the Asshole is one-sided storytelling, which does leave the reader to digest what kind of person OP is based on the way they write. True. Yeah, that's one of the things about this subreddit, that it would be great if somehow we had like a guaranteed way of like appending to a post like the other person's side of the story. Like if that were possible. Sadly it's not, but that would help so much with making judgments about these cases. If it was a tennis ball, I'd be blind, so I'd take badminton over both. Oh, I see, yeah. Yeah, badminton, pretty solid choice too. If philosophy were authors, Karos, horror, axe, romance, T action. I think that's fair, yeah. I like the thought of Karos writing horror because I know he sometimes gets scared of things. And so I feel like if he were to write a horror story, it would be like him facing his fears. Which I know he has done on stream. He has faced his fears on stream by playing scary games. If I were them, I'd ask Katie to teach me how to make it. Yeah, I don't think Katie would be particularly disposed to do that, but who knows, maybe she'd go for it. Or maybe she'd at least be less insulted. She'd feel less insulted maybe if he asked her that. Really, that's great. I look forward to it. Oh, thank you, Lotto. I look forward to it too. So chat, there's one more case that I think we can talk about. Or actually, I think there's one more. Is it? Oh, okay. Yep. That's right. One more case. So this one is kind of different from some of the other, although it does involve food. Remember my earlier comment, chat, about how a lot of these cases, oddly enough, involve food? Well, this one does too. Am I the asshole if I asked my daughter's dipnophobic boyfriend not to come over when we are eating? Now, if you're wondering what that word means, because honestly, I had to look it up too before the stream, it apparently means like someone who has kind of like a phobia, or at least a very intense aversion to either eating in front of others or like being around others when they're eating, like sitting around the table. And so that is useful context to understand this particular case. Let's read it together. My daughter has been dating this guy a couple months. One day, oh, actually, you know what, chat? I forgot to give my verdict. How could I have forgotten? Okay, sorry, we're gonna backtrack a little bit. So this is the case about offering Katie money for food. I'm just gonna call this Offering money to the hallway person for food, but just to shorten it, I'll say for food. My verdict on this one is overall pretty friendly to the guy. I think not the asshole is what I would go with. Even though that was a relatively unpopular verdict in the chat, or not in the chat I should say, but in the comments on the original post. This was a relatively unpopular verdict, but that is the one I would go with for that one. So yes, chat, now that we have that verdict on the table, which you are of course free to agree or disagree with, let's consider the final case of the evening, which is right here. Yep. My daughter has been dating this guy a couple of months. One day, he was going to hang out and watch movies and have pizza. We ordered pizza extra to ensure we had enough for him, and as soon as I got home with it, he walked out without even saying goodbye, which we thought was rude. On another occasion, we invited him to a restaurant to celebrate a special event for my daughter. He ordered food, but didn't eat, and spent most of the dinner in the bathroom. Finally, we spent the day out with him along, I guess alone should be, and stopped for food. Oh no, with him along, I see. Like him along for the way. And stopped for food. We were all famished. I encouraged him to order something, my treat, along with everyone else, and he refused. Then he just sat there awkwardly, watching everyone eat. It made me very uncomfortable, because I don't like people watching me eat. I told my daughter that I think he's been pretty rude, but she likes him, so she thinks his behavior is no big deal. A little while later, my daughter informs us that he has an issue eating in front of people. So I say, well, that's fine, but then he doesn't need to hang around at mealtimes because it makes me uncomfortable eating in front of someone that isn't eating with us. Now my daughter is mad that I'm discriminating against his disability, and I wouldn't treat someone else like that if they have a disability. Am I the asshole for not wanting him around at mealtimes? So one thing we should say, chat, to clarify the case here at the start, is he concludes by asking, am I the asshole for not wanting him around at mealtimes? Which makes it sound as if he's wondering whether he's the asshole for simply feeling a certain way. But the title of the post, if we go back, is, am I the asshole if I asked my daughter's dipnophobic boyfriend not to come over when we were eating? Which makes it sound as if he's wondering whether he would be the asshole if he took the action of asking the daughter's boyfriend not to come over during mealtimes. So the way he describes the case at the end versus in the title is a little bit different. I think the case makes the most sense if we interpret it in this way, the way of the title. It's like he's considering, in other words, like just telling this guy, telling the daughter's boyfriend, like, hey, we would rather you not come over when we're eating. Because I think that that's something that it's intuitively a little easier to see both sides of the case. Whereas if it really just were a case of like him not wanting him around at mealtimes, but like still like being willing to have him around, then it just seems to me like it would be really hard to get a like you're the asshole judgment for that if it's just purely a feeling that he has. But once we bring it into the realm of action, it's a little easier to see what the controversy might be. So what are your thoughts, chat? Yeah, should this guy, or maybe not should this guy ask, but like, would this guy be a jerk if he asked the daughter's boyfriend not to come over when they're eating? Because I can tell you my thoughts on this one are a little bit multifaceted, but I'll give you all a chance to say a few things while I catch up on some of the other comments. Oh, I see some people are Tia praising my fiction, right? Thank you, Tia. It's very nice of you. And well, really, I look forward to it. Yeah, I think at this point it's probably too late to ask her for the recipe. Oh, the previous case, yeah, it probably is. Sadly, it would be nice if it wasn't too late, but alas, it probably is. Why are all these about food? Because food is life, Tia. Yeah, I guess just occasions with food are maybe one of the main ways in which people interact with each other, I suppose, or like interact with each other outside of a work setting. And so maybe occasions involving food in some way just have a lot of potential for conflicts that are the kind of conflicts that get posted on this subreddit. That's my best guess anyway for why a lot of these involve food. now starring Axaeon Judge during Determiner of Hassles. That's right. That is this stream. Very much so. I guess food is a big deal in Asian cultures. Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's easy to see why food would be a big deal in a given culture, because, I mean, food kind of is a big deal, you know? Like, we need food. Definitely need food. But you could say maybe, you know, the fact that we need it doesn't mean culturally it has to be a big deal. Like, maybe there are some cultures that don't treat it as a big deal. They just treat it as like a necessity that, you know, we do to survive, but it doesn't have much cultural meaning. So I suppose I can see how, yeah, maybe cultures differ on this part of it. It's a weird-ass phobia, can't relate. I can see how, yeah, it probably does seem pretty weird to those of us who don't have it. I don't want to say I can relate to it, because I'm not, like, I don't have this phobia, but there was a part of me that kind of understands in a way where the son is coming, or the boyfriend is coming from. I feel like it's a certain type of social anxiety, or like one manifestation of a certain type of social anxiety. Like maybe how some people, you know, have issues about public speaking, or like many people have issues about public speaking. I feel like for this person, it's kind of like that, but just with food for some reason. And that parallel to me kind of makes it seem relatively understandable. All right, the spooky philosophy and Halloween streams were pretty historic too. Oh, well, thank you to you. Yeah, I did have a lot of fun during those streams. It's kind of weird that the boyfriend having the float panel sits at the table watching them eat. Yeah, what I think is going on there, Jinx, is that he has this phobia, but at the same time, he feels awkward about bringing it up to them. And so maybe to him, just sitting there and watching them is like the least scary thing. Like, it's less scary than talking about this with them, because maybe he feels some level of shame over it. Maybe he feels embarrassed about it. And so maybe just dealing with it in that kind of indirect way by not explicitly bringing it up, but just kind of, you know, not ordering food. Maybe that's the way that he prefers to cope with it. That's how it seems to me anyway. There's one perspective missing from this post, the boyfriend. How does he feel about being around people eating? Would he prefer to stay away? Yeah, that's what it seems. I think that the implication is that he doesn't really particularly like being around others when they're eating. Or at the very least, he does not like eating when others are near him. Like when he eats, it looks like he likes to be alone. Ultimately, I think no assholes here, but OP and the boyfriend should have an honest conversation. Yeah, I mean, my verdict on it is kind of multifaceted in a similar way. I do think the boyfriend has been a bit rude for not letting the dad know about the issue. Like, I think instead, like, just walking out without saying anything and, you know, ordering food but not eating it, like, those are kind of rude. Now, granted, it's probably something that the boyfriend feels really awkward about, which makes it somewhat understandable that he would be reluctant to talk to the dad about it. But I would say it's still something that he ought to do. Like, this is still his burden to bear of talking about it with others who are in the position of, you know, ordering him food and things like that. At the very least, I think we can say that the boyfriend should have found a way to do it indirectly. Like, if he's feeling too awkward about it to talk to the dad himself, maybe he could have gotten his girlfriend to talk to her dad about it, like before any of this became an issue. And then that would have solved a lot of the case. But with that said, I also do want to say that I think the dad would be rude, would be in the wrong, if he specifically asked the boyfriend not to come over during meal times. And that's because, to me, it would just seem needlessly exclusionary. Because even if the boyfriend doesn't like eating when others are around, for all we know, he might still like just sitting there and conversing with everyone. At least, I feel like the case leaves that open as a possibility. Like, maybe he would prefer that to just being excluded altogether during meal times. And I think that if the dad were to realize and reflect on this, then that might help him feel more comfortable with it if the boyfriend did come over for future meal times. And if the dad did continue to feel uncomfortable with the boyfriend being there while they're eating, and like the rest of them are eating, but like the boyfriend isn't, then I'm inclined to think that that's a problem with the dad rather than the boyfriend. I think the issue would be with the dad of trying to help himself feel more comfortable with it. And I think he could feel more comfortable with it if he were to just reflect of like, okay, like this is what the boyfriend wants. Like, even though most people probably wouldn't like just sitting there not eating while the rest of us are, you know, the boyfriend is different. Like, this doesn't bother him. Like, he's okay being here with us during these times. And I think if the dad were to really internalize that, he probably would come to feel more comfortable with it. So that's what I'm inclined to say about this case. No assholes here, but leaning very slightly to you're the asshole. OP's feelings are valid, and if the boyfriend is going to continue dating the daughter, they'll need to figure out a solution for this long term that works for everyone. Right, yeah. And I think that the solution just involves like being open about this and talking about it. I think that's the key mistake that has been made so far, is just kind of letting things get swept under the rug. I do also think the daughter brought up the boyfriend's condition too late. True, very much agreed with that. Yeah, I'd say a ban would feel too punitive. I think so too. Yeah, to me it would just feel a little bit too harsh, a little bit too exclusionary to say to the boyfriend, like, hey, we don't want you coming over during meal times. Let me yap for a second. Food is made by measurements, which is a type of math. Mathematics is numbers and how they go together. Math is universal language, I think. Law just a theory. Okay, well, I mean, it is true. Measurements are quite important in food, especially when we're dealing with recipes and things like that. So I think you're correct about that as far as it goes. But yeah, so my verdict on this case, chat, well, actually, first, why don't we read some of the comments to get a sense of... I think this was one of the cases that actually divided the community quite a bit. But here we see a top comment says, if someone has a phobia of eating in front of others, but otherwise still wants to hang with the gang during mealtimes, forcing them out of the dinner table is unnecessarily harsh. Would you force someone away from the table if they just had dental work and can't eat? Or if there was any compelling physical reason why they wouldn't be able to join in the meal? Somehow, I doubt it. Just being uncomfortable with someone not eating at the table isn't a good enough reason to tell them to leave. Which is well said, in my opinion. I think this person is right. That being said, if you didn't want the guy around because he had been rude for doing things like leaving without saying goodbye the moment you came home with food, or ordering something and then not eating it, that's a different matter entirely. It low-key does sound like this guy has severe social anxiety around food and company, but he really should have let you know instead of forcing your daughter to explain it to you secondhand. He also definitely should have let you know before letting the situation devolve into scenarios you mentioned before. The walking out on the movie, ordering and then not eating, where his behavior can easily be mistaken for outright rudeness. Depending on how involved you intend to get with this guy, such how serious your daughter is about the relationship, it might be worth having a conversation with him about this, so you know how to proceed with him going forward, about whether or not you should order food when he comes over, offer food when he comes over, or if he even wants to be there for mealtime with the gang, without just, fully stonewalling him. Need to deliver judgment since this is the top comment now, so fuck it. Everyone sucks here. Relatively moderate judgment, yeah, some nuance there. If you're going to exclude the guy from the table, don't hide it behind a flimsy reason like him not eating makes me uncomfortable. That's what your daughter is using as ammo against you because it's BS. Just tell her that you didn't like how he acted outside of not eating, and cite how he behaved rudely and previously encountered, and that's why you don't want him at the table anymore. Phobia disability is not give you a pass to leave without saying goodbye or order food on someone else's dime, then not eating and then spend the entire dinner in the bathroom. So this person goes on for a long time. I'm not going to read the entire comment, but I want to say, like, even if we just grant, which seems to me fair, that the boyfriend was rude in his earlier interactions, I do think going on to ask him not to attend any future mealtimes would be unnecessarily harsh in response to that. So I think like being uncomfortable around him because the boyfriend was rude is a little bit better than being uncomfortable around him just because like he's not eating. But at the same time, I'd want to think even if the dad's request were in response to the boyfriend's rudeness, it does seem to me like it would be an unnecessarily harsh thing. So the overall verdict on that, I would say, at least for me, and we could title this case, let me make sure I'm spelling it correctly here, Deepnophobic Boyfriend. That's our word for the day, chat. arachnophobic boyfriend. I would want to say that yes, that's the dad would be in the wrong if he specifically asked the boyfriend not to come over for meal times. All right, I'll admit my no assholes here judgment was under the assumption that OP's boyfriend would actually prefer not to be around the table, which I realize I could be wrong about, and with me being a bit forgiving. I see. Yes. Well, I'm naturally a bit forgiving too, Ro, so I think we're kind of aligned in that respect at least. But yeah, I kind of like the others. There are some things about this case that we just don't... Oh, wait, I see you have a follow-up comment there. Being a bit forgiving towards boyfriend because phobias are inherently irrationally and don't always make you act in a rational manner. Yeah, I mean, I think I would say that being in the grip of a phobia can certainly make one act irrationally when the phobia is being triggered by something. For example, this is just a really simple, easy example, but like if somebody has arachnophobia and there's like a spider there, they might like jump back like into the street, you know, where there's a much bigger danger of being hit by a car and seriously injured than like any danger that the spider presented to them. So like maybe that will be an example of how like a phobia can make someone act irrationally. But when the phobia is not being triggered in the moment, like let's say that the family is gathered around and like they're not eating a meal or anything like that, it's just the boyfriend happens to be there, I would want to say maybe at that point the boyfriend could just like take the father aside and let him know about this. Or if that's too much to ask, then like the boyfriend could even just talk to his girlfriend about it and then get the girlfriend to tell her dad. Like if that's an easier solution. So no, I would want to say I think the boyfriend is on the hook at least for doing that much. So if we look at the overall tally, chat, let's see. We have one case, you're the asshole, not the asshole, not the asshole, not the asshole, and then you're the... Okay. So a pretty even mix, I guess, of verdicts here. At least if you ask me. But one reason why I find these cases interesting to look at, interesting to talk about, is just that I think they, again, show that there's a real hankering that people have for talking about moral dilemmas, and that this could maybe be sort of a segue for many people into a deeper or more academic exploration of moral dilemmas. Like I'm trying to think right now of like how it would be framed. Like if you were to tell people like, hey, you know that subreddit you like reading of those like juicy cases on am I the asshole? Well, there are some ethical theories and principles that might help us make sense of some of those cases, and like here are some philosophers who wrote about them. Like that would be a thing to do, like maybe like not in this stream, but like maybe in like a future stream or video or what have you. I feel like that could be, or maybe part of a lecture of some type. I could see it going that way. But as those are all the cases for today, probably I will end the stream pretty soon, I think. I don't think there was too much else for today, but one thing I can tell you, chat, is that having your comments here has helped me to get both a sense of like the different views on the table that there are about these cases, but also just like how one might defend those various views. And so I like it when there's a divergence of opinions here and when people are sharing their own thoughts in the way that you all have. So it's always very helpful, I think, for me and for everyone who follows these discussions. So thank you for that. Any ideas on how to convert Am I the Asshole readers into philosophy viewers? Now that is a good question, Tia. You know, it's kind of sad, but the first thing that came to mind was posting something, like posting a case on Am I the Asshole about us, but like it's a case that's made up. Could be like, Reddit, am I the asshole, or would I be the asshole if I... And then like it's something like a VTuber drama that we just make up. Like amongst ourselves, and we like try to engineer the case to be like maximally controversial and like maximally enraging for many people. Might get some eyes on us. Awesome job on the stream. Oh, thank you, Tia. It was a lot of fun. I had fun talking about you all. Talking about you all. Talking about these issues with you all. Ax, you have given me brain cell. Oh, nice. Love giving people brain cells. So thank you, Jinx. Thank you for letting me know. That would absolutely be the way. Yes. A little bit underhanded, but I guess if we're talking about what would be most effective, strictly speaking. Google Docky incoming. Oh no, not the Google Dockies. Yeah. Anytime I see someone post a Google Doc on Twitter, it's like, oh no, what drama is incoming now? And I almost feel like it's unfair to Google Docs. I'm sorry, Google. I know you never had the intention of having your type of documents be the thing everyone thinks of when they think of VTuber drama, but somehow it just happened. But anyway, chat, that is about all for today. I have not decided yet on next week's streaming activities, but tomorrow maybe I'll set up a schedule for that. But in the meantime, hope y'all have a nice rest of your Friday evening. Am I the asshole for leaking our debut announcement early? Karis Upanor. Oh, I see this. You still have some feelings about this, huh, Tia? Yeah, when Karis leaked our debut announcement early for Philosophy, that was a very funny, like all-time classic moment, I would say, for Philosophy. Now I have 2 whole brains. Oh, nice. Hey, you got to start somewhere, Jinx. Maybe I have 2 whole brain cells too. You know, I think the important thing is just are we improving in that metric and in all the other metrics. Any improvement deserves to be celebrated. I'd actually love to hear about a situation specifically engineered for divisive opinions by philosophers. You know, that might be an idea for a future stream. Sorry. I was trying to go for this toggle, but I picked the wrong one. Yeah, that might be an idea for a future stream of like, is there a case that would be like the maximally controversial case, the case that would have most people most at each other's throats? There was a short story, kind of sci-fi story by Scott Alexander called "Sort by Controversial" that goes into this. That goes into that question. Actually, maybe I'll put the link in chat, just in case anyone's curious of following up on that. Those cases are sometimes called scissor cases, cases that divide people relatively evenly. So that's right here in case anybody is curious to read that. But a short story that's about political polarization and disagreements that people have with each other, and especially the potential for technology to exacerbate those disagreements. Very fascinating. I've moved on. It was just funny. Oh, okay. I see. Good to know. Good to know. Before I only had half of a brain cell. Now I have 2. Oh, okay. So I've given you 1.5 brain cells then. Nice. Oh, thank you for the info. Oh, sure thing. Yeah. But yeah, next week I'm thinking, I might finish the Forgotten... I already finished the Forgotten City, but I might go for the true ending in one of the streams. But there'll be some other streams too, and I'm also currently working on another video. Gonna start trying to release videos more regularly because I enjoy doing those, and I think it's a fun way to get kind of deeper into some of the philosophy. So stay tuned on all that. But again, in the meantime, have a good rest of the evening, chat, and I'll see you all again very soon. Goodbye, everyone.